We're going to look today at how to write equations from tables. So just a little reminder that your slope is always your m value. That's your change in y over change in x. Your y-intercept, so let me put that on there. So your slope is your change in y over your change in x. Your y-intercept is always when your x value is 0. That is your y-intercept. And then we always use the equation y equals mx plus b. So when you're doing that, you literally are just taking, whenever you find the slope, you're taking out the m and putting that value in there. After you find your y-intercept, you're taking that b out and putting that y value into there. So to find our slope, we have to go and find our change in y. So over here is where I find my change in y value. So to go from 3 to 7, I am changing by 4. To go from 0 to 1, I'm changing by 1. And then I'm taking this number and just putting it underneath there. So I know my slope is 4 over 1, which simplifies down to 4. Fortunately, on this one, it tells me in the table that my x value is 0 here. So when my x value is 0, I know that that is my y-intercept. So my ordered pair would be like 0, 3. But this right there, that 3 would be my y-intercept b. So when I go to write my equation, then I'm going to have y equals 4x plus 3. So I have my equation. I'm going to leave the one over here on the right for you to practice here in a little bit because I want to do a couple of other examples with you. Don't get confused. So if you notice on this table over here that I have a 0 in this y area over here. Remember, my y-intercept is only when my x value is 0, so this would not be my y-intercept. So I'm going to show you how to find your y-intercept whenever you don't have your slope. So, or you don't have 0 as your x. So if I go to find my slope here, so my change in y, and here's my change in x. To go from 0 to 2, I'm changing by 2. To go from 2 to 3, I'm changing by 1. And I can just put that underneath there. So I get that my slope is 2 over 1. I know that my equation then, this simplifies down to 2. I know my equation is then starting out as y equals 2x. And I'm either going to need to add something or subtract something to get, to find what my y-intercept is. So if I know that these are my x values here, if I do 2 times 2, that gives me 4, but I have to do some kind of operation to get to 0. So I would have to subtract 4 to get to 0. If I do 2 times 1, that gives me 2. I would have to subtract 4 to get to negative 2. If I do 2 times 3, that gives me 6. I would have to subtract 4 to get to 2. So you know your y-intercept is going to be, every time I'm basically subtracting 4. So your ordered pair would be 0, negative 4. With that being your y-intercept that you are putting into your equation. So you kind of can try it out to see what you have to do to figure out what your y-intercept is. In this case, we could have worked backwards to get to 0, right? If I know that I was adding 2 going down, I could have subtracted 2. And if I would have done a negative 2 minus 2, it would have given me a negative 4 up here. But sometimes our tables don't always work up like that. So being able to know how to use your x values and y values to help find your y-intercept is super helpful. So the next thing that you are going to do is you are going to, let's check this one out. So I am going to find again, here's my change in y, here's my change in x. If I go from 6 to 12, I'm adding 6. If I'm going from 1 to 2, I am changing by 1. So I'm going to take this, put it underneath there, and I get that my slope is 6 over 1. And I can then simplify that down and know that I have that my slope is 6. So I'm going to have my equation y equals 6x is where I'm starting. So if I do 6 times 1, that gives me 6. Do I have to add or subtract anything to get to 6? No. If I do 6 times 2, it gives me 12. Again, I don't have to add or subtract anything. So I know that this would go through the origin, and that 0 would be my y-intercept. So I would not have to do anything. My equation would just be y equals 6x. Let's look at one more that it doesn't give you the y-intercept, and I will let you practice on these. So if I go from 5 to 7, here's my change in y over here, here's my change in x. If I go from 5 to 7, I'm changing by 2. If I'm going from 1 to 2, I'm changing by 1. I can put that right underneath there, so I know that my slope is 2 over 1, which gives me 2. My equation starts out then as y equals 2x. So if I do 2 times 1, that gives me 2. I would have to add 3 to get my 5, right? If I do 2 times 2, that gives me 4. I would have to add 3 to get my 5. So I know that since I'm adding, or to get to 7, so I know that I'm adding 3 each time. So I would add 3. My ordered pair would be 0, 3, with that 3 being your y-intercept that you would use into your equation. So if you have any other questions, I will be doing a Zoom tomorrow afternoon at 2:20. Make sure you jump on, and I will go over more of these with you if you need extra help.